Hi guys, it's Misty from the Book Rat, and it has been a hot minute. I'm gonna have a video coming up very soon, kind of explaining where I've been and why I haven't been blogging or vlogging much. So I'm not gonna get into all of that in this video, but instead, I'm gonna hop right into what has been requested a few times, and that is my faves of 2019 so far. So we're about to the halfway point of the year. I did one of these videos last year as well of the books that I've really liked that are kind of likely to end up in my best of the year as a whole. But that said, when I did this video last year, it was really hard for me to narrow down. I did 6, and it was really hard for me to narrow down what would end up in that 6, and I was super enthusiastic about all of them, and I think the majority of them did end up making that best of 2018 list. This time around I feel a lot less enthusiastic, and it was a lot more of a struggle. I had to like pore over my bullet journal logs to see, did I have favorites of 2019? I think there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, I've been reading a lot. I'm still reading every day, and that can kind of make things fade from memory pretty quickly, you know, like I'm going through them so fast that I just forget that I read them. But also, for a good portion of this year, pretty much the whole first like quarter of this year, I was reading a lot of very similar books by the same authors over and over that are just kind of fun and fluffy and not necessarily best of for me. You know, they kind of run together, they're not super memorable. I don't think I would say that they're like groundbreaking in how they're written, which means that they're not likely to make a list like this. But that said, they were what I needed. So I'm gonna kind of touch on those, but first I'm gonna get to my faves of 2019, and there actually are some. Once I sat down and thought about it, I was like, no, there have been some really excellent books this year, and some that I'm gonna put on the list because they're my favorites so far, but I don't think they'll necessarily make it onto the best of the whole year list. So let's see. Just like last year, I'm going to work down towards my absolute fave of the year so far, and that's where things are going to get a little tricky because I haven't actually decided that yet. There are some that are definitely like neck and neck, but I'm going to start off, I guess I'll just start off with those honorable mentions. I read a lot of things by Molly Harper, and a lot of things, not a lot of things, but a few things by Sarah McLean. I think both have their issues, both are flawed, but both were so fun and just what my soul needed. So shout out to the two of them, especially Molly Harper, because I read more books by her in such a short period of time, probably more than any other author ever, aside from when I occasionally binge Abigail Reynolds, which is what I did at the end of last year. I think it was just kind of like a solid 6 months of binging very similar books, and specifically romance books. I know, who am I? As far as Molly is concerned, I read a number of her books from the Half Moon Hollow series, which is kind of southern urban fantasy, but it's not urban, it's like southern country fantasy, I guess. And from her Southern Eclectic series, which is contemporary romance. And of them all, I think the Half Moon Hollow series is super fun and something that you can fall into whenever. You don't have to read them straight through, so that's great. But my favorite would probably be the Southern Eclectic series, and of them, I would say maybe Ain't She a Peach was my favorite. I don't know. I could probably show you what it looks like. So here is my phone, which is what I use to vlog, and I've talked about this before. Dropped it, cracked it all over where the camera is on the back, and also on the front. I don't know if you can see that, but again, cracked right where the camera is. So for those of you that have been asking for vlogs, that's why that hasn't happened. But yeah, so most things I've been reading digitally or listening to on audiobook digitally, and just working out for me. I just love it. So I'll be showing you a lot of my cracked screen. Sorry about that. Overdrive won't go to the cover, so I guess we'll be Googling these covers. Alright, so this is the cover of, I'm gonna say it was probably my favorite by Molly Harper this year, Ain't She a Peach, and then from Sarah McLean, probably the first one I read, which was The Rogue Not Taken. So I recommend both ladies if you're looking for something just fun and happy to read, but those are kind of honorable mentions. Now on to the rest of what I read this year. Not the rest of what I read this year, because I'm in like the I don't even know. I've almost met my goal for Goodreads this year. I'm going to start with another honorable mention, actually. It's like straddling the line between honorable mention and actually made the favorites list. And that is Sawkill Girls, which I listened to an audiobook on Hoopla. Looks like this. I just finished it today, actually. And it's not quite making the favorites list just because there was a lot of cheesiness that it was hard to get past, and I think that was kind of amped up by the narrator, although her creepy voice that she did at the end was just, it was stellar and just got under my skin. I think it's I have some issues with it, but I think that it also was really good, and I think that teen girls especially will like it and appreciate it, and I think that the heavy-handedness and cheesiness might be well calculated to work for them, actually. So we're going to call that 6.5. At number 6 is one of the few physical books that I read this year, and though I have talked about it a bit, I still haven't actually officially reviewed it, partly because I keep forgetting that it exists. I guess doesn't bode well for a book. If it's not memorable, then is it really a favorite? But I'm not entirely sure what. I just saw a robin outside go like, and then just fall. Almost like it was on a trampoline. Weird. If a book's not super memorable, then it maybe doesn't deserve a spot on the favorites list, but I don't think that it's not memorable. It just doesn't seem like I read it this year. I read it towards the beginning of the year and it feels like forever ago. And that is A Last of Her Name by Jessica Corey. This is kind of futuristic and alien sci-fi retelling, if you can call it a retelling, of the Lost Princess, Princess Anastasia, or Anastasia, how do you say that? So a take on true events, but obviously very not true to life, but I think in a really interesting way. It takes the story of the murder of the Tsar's family and politics and things like that, and it interprets them really interestingly. Get away from my succulents, dude. No. You know better. I think that it uses the real life events super effectively. Also is really good at making an alien world, making the characters different from each other when they are different breeds or species or whatever it may be. Just something that I think so many far futuristic alien-ish books don't do well. So really have to hand it to her for that, and I did enjoy and recommend this one. Number 5 is another physical book that I read, and this one has been reviewed. I will leave the link below, and it is The Things She's Seen by Amblin and Ezekiel Quaymolina. This is a very brief novel. I think that you could easily read it within one sitting if you wanted to, and I think it is also compelling enough to make you want to read it in one sitting. I read most of it in one sitting, kind of like 2 marathon sessions. Yeah, I'm not going to go super into detail because, again, I've reviewed it already. I'll leave that linked. You can find out what I thought and why, but basically, I think, though it's probably not the book for everyone, and it's going to be challenging for some people, it was just so super engaging and compelling, and I think powerful and important, so check out that review, and then check out the book. Definitely worth it. Number 4, and that's really saying something because I love this author, so the fact that it's only number 4 means the top 3 are. But number 4 is Child of the Prophecy by Juliet Marillier. This is the 3rd book in the Seven Waters trilogy, and I'm only just now reading it. Those of you who know the things that I love are going to be shocked by that, because Daughter of the Forest is one of my all-time favorite, all-time recommended books. I started to say of all time. It is just stellar, and I reread it routinely, and the same goes for the second book, Son of Shadows. When I first read that one, I didn't think that it compared at all, but I have since reread that one again multiple times, and I reread it again this year. But I had never moved on to the 3rd book, and I'm not sure why. I think partly it's because they are an emotional investment for me. Even after reading Daughter of the Forest, I don't know how many times, I still cry every time. But also, when I want to dive into the world, I'm always craving a reread, so I don't want to move on to the 3rd book because I want to reread Daughter of the Forest or Son of Shadows. But this year, when I was trying to decide between the two, I ended up reading Son of Shadows, and I was too lazy to get up and get my copy off my shelves. I read it digitally, and at the end of the digital copy, there's a little preview of book 3, and so I went ahead and read that, and that meant that I had to keep reading. So continuing the lazy streak, because it was the middle of the night when I finished Son of Shadows, I didn't get up and find my copy of Child of the Prophecy. It's back there somewhere. I read it digitally and I don't know why I waited so long. It's so good. It's complex. I think that it still suffers from some of the issues that I've talked about in the past as far as villains spilling their guts. That's always going to be a pet peeve of mine. There's a general tendency towards so much exposition being put into speech, but it somehow suits the style and works in this case, and I loved it. I loved it a lot. Fanya was great. I'm sure the ending's not going to be super satisfying for some people, but it just, you know, the series as a whole works. And I know that there are more books in the trilogy. It's not a trilogy anymore. I think they kind of just continue the world, but not necessarily this specific story. I'm not sure about that, but I do have at least one of them, and maybe all of them. I'm not sure. Sometimes I go on these book buying jags from Better World Books, and things just happen, so I don't know, but I will not be waiting forever to move on to book 4. Now, for my top 3, I'm really not sure about the placement of any of these. They all could be number 1 or 2 or 3, so I'm just going to kind of pick one and go, but just know that these aren't necessarily numbers 1, 2, and 3 in the order that I'm presenting them. They're just how I feel at the moment whenever you ask me, because they're all neck and neck and awesome. So we'll start with what I'm calling 3 for now. That is Keeping the Castle by Patricia Kindle. Now you'll see that this is a physical book that I just pulled off my shelves, but this is not actually what I read. I listened to the audiobook, which was in the Audible romance package, I think. Why did I say Audible twice? Pretty sure it was in the Audible romance package, and I wish that they would put the second book on so much, because I thought the narrator was fantastic. This gave me strong Emma meets I Capture the Castle vibes, and I love both of those so much. I think that the main character, as is the case for Emma, is probably going to put some people off, but I adored her. I loved the story, I loved the way it's told and the kind of playfulness of it. I loved the tone, I loved the style. I thought the narrator killed it, and I immediately went and bought the digital copy of the second book, which I think is called School for Brides, but I haven't read it yet because I want to listen to the audio, so I'm probably going to just hold out on that for a while. But this was so good! Why did I wait so long to read this? I knew I was going to love it. I will be rereading this. Absolutely, this is going in the reread pile and the re-listen pile, and I don't think that I've ever re-listened to an audiobook, but I think it's going to be like a comfort audiobook. Well, number 2 for now, and I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to talk about this. This is not technically a book yet. I mean, it's written, but to my knowledge, it hasn't like gone out to publishers, hasn't been bought that I know of. Things could have changed because it's been about 6 months since I read it, but I beta read this, so I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to talk about it. However, After the Beast by Mary Haskell, oh, so good. It's just everything that I want. Basically it's a kind of Regency set, diverse retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and it is kind of magical and surreal and has alternating timelines and just I'm not going to go into more than that, but just keep it on your radar, and I hopefully will be talking about it again in the future and rereading it in a final form like a fully evolved Pokemon of perfection. And the last book on this list of my faves so far, and this is another one that, how did it take me this long to read this? And that is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This is another one that so many people have been recommending to me for ages. I've been telling myself to read it for ages. I knew I was going to like it. Of course I already know what it's about. I've seen the movie. But did I know what it was about? Because that movie and this book are not the same thing. Both are fantastic. But this is just, I'm sorry, but it blows the movie out of the water. It was so delightful. Just goddamn delightful. I do have the next book in the series, House of Many Ways. Is that the next one? I hope so, because that's what I've got. I will be reading more. Again, I think this is one that I will reread. I wish I had read it when I was younger because it already would be a comfort book. This would already be one that I reach for and reread and am happy about. And Sophie is just... oh, she's everything. She's everything. So, those are my 6 and then some favorite books of the year so far, and I don't know why I started this off kind of negatively, because actually when I stopped to think about it, I've read some kick-ass books this year, and some that have just made me happy, even if they weren't like the best books ever. They were the best books for the time. They were what I needed, so ignore what I said. Ignore Negative Nancy in the beginning, because some of these will most definitely end up on my faves of 2019 list, unless the rest of 2019 list is like the best reading year ever. Those top 3 at the very least are shoo-ins, and probably all of the top 6. I don't know. It could happen. So, those are my thoughts. If you've read any of those books, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Some of them I know are divisive. I think there will be a lot of people that are like, no, God, I hated that book, just as much as there will be people that are like, yes, that book was perfection. So let me know where you fall on the spectrum, and if you haven't read them, please do, and then come and talk to me, because I loved them and I want to talk to you about them. Also, let me know your faves. It doesn't have to be 6, it can be 2 or 10, or maybe you've read like 700 books already this year and you should give your eyes a break, first of all. But also let me know your favorites of those 700 in the comments, because I want to know, and I want more good recommendations. I also want, if you had any good listens, good audiobooks. I have had some comics as well that I've read so far this year that I really liked, but I don't think that any of them were good enough to kind of make the cut for this, but I will be doing a comics video soon, I think, so if you want to see that, let me know, or give this a thumbs up. And since I'm kind of back now, she says hopefully, let me know what you would like to see, but I will be chatting with you guys again soon, and until then, thank you guys for watching, and happy reading!